Welcome, data people. We are Zuma. My name is Matt, and this is the Data for Good podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Zuma. Zuma is a dedicated recruitment company focusing on data positions across Berlin. The Data for Good podcast is for the world of data science, analytics, and engineering, giving you a platform to hear the thoughts and opinions of data leaders from Berlin and beyond. Today, we are joined by Dr. Robert Andrew Fowler, Director of Advanced Analytics at Simon-Kucher. Andrew, welcome. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks for the doctor shout out. Mostly only people who are selling me stuff call me Dr. Fowler, but nice to get a little recognition for those letters.
There we go. Happy to throw it in there. First off, for those who don't know who you are, there won't be many, but can you give us a quick introduction?
Sure. My name's Andrew. I am a director at Simon-Kucher and Partners. We're a consulting firm primarily concerned with the sunny side of consulting, which is to say things that make you more money as opposed to cutting out things that cost more. We work on pricing, marketing, and sales. I'm in particular working in our life sciences division, which is one of our largest divisions, working with pharma, medical devices, anything that makes health better. And so I work primarily with data topics in that. So everything from the philosophical problems of what does it mean to be a physician in the era of generative AI to really nuts and bolts of data-driven pricing and predictive modeling.
Awesome. So, I mean, we've been speaking for a while now. We've never been short of topics to discuss. Some really, really great chats that we've had. So we're going to keep it quite open today. We're going to talk about data now and then. I mean, I don't know where we should start, but what is your relationship with data?
Well, from a philosophical perspective, I feel like the scientific method is the only method by which we get consistently less stupid as a species. So, being cautious and meticulous with the information that we have to make the best decision that we can. That's not new. I mean, that's been the earliest forms of human writing were ledgers in ancient Sumeria, I believe. So, keeping track of how much stuff you have and how much you want to sell it for, sort of the earliest forms of data, the earliest technology for recording that. I mean, clay tablets, it sounds like it's not really technology. It's certainly not in like distributed databases, but that was quite a leap from, rolling around in the mud and, trying to catch a woolly mammoth with a hole in the ground. The direction is only going towards complexity when it comes to the amount of data that we capture and that we use, because the value of it is high. Privileged information means opportunities for generating value. And the more that you are able to collect relevant information and analyze it for making a correct decision, the better you can do. And believe me, I can ramble about historical examples of that until we run out of time here. But in the interest of being more practical, in modern terms, our computers have just been getting better and better and better. So there's more data that we can use. I mean, like if you think about just the amount of information that's available to you. I mean, in the earliest video games, there are these huge hunks of plastic that had just like 2 megabytes of storage on them. And now, I mean, like I can store 2 megabytes in my glasses, which have no electronic component whatsoever. Like we can just store so much more. We've gotten to a point where you can't, with your own meat computer that sits between your ears, you can't analyze all that without some special technology and special.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept that we can realize how far we've come from the past, but we can't quite think about converting that into the future. We think that we're as good as we can get or as close to. I've seen the pictures of the IBM, the original 5 megabyte computer, and they're pushing it onto a truck, and it's 3 meters squared, and now you can get a terabyte on your fingernail.
Yeah, absolutely. Which it's awesome. I say all the time, we live in the future, and I'm an eternal optimist. I don't know if that's it may not be socially popular all the time, but I do think the world is every single day getting a little bit better. And so the question of relevance really comes up a lot in business, because business is converting a pile of money into more money.
Yeah.
And everything that takes a little bite out of your original investment capital is something that is you got to really consider. And working with data costs money, both in terms of expensive professionals like myself, and in the tech stack. So time on cloud compute, storage stuff, all that. And it really is we run into a decision paralysis based on complexity quite a bit. And so for me, it's helpful to think about the kind of two places where I think data can help the most. One is a data product. And so that can be as simple as we have a proprietary data set that we can collect that no one else can. And we'll just sell you that data, and you can have that data, and we'll keep it updated for you. And that is sort of central to their business. Another step removed from that would be we have proprietary data, or we have a machine learning algorithm that works on your data. So data as an essential product or service. And then the next is sort of operational data. How do we run our own business based on our own internal information and make the best internal decisions that we possibly can? And I would say that most consulting firms, Simon-Kucher included, work primarily with that second camp. So how do you the things that you would do in your normal operations as a business leader, like deciding on how much something costs, or deciding on how to staff warehouse staff, or really any sort of regular operational decision, or sort of strategic decision that needs good information to make correctly. And so I would say, that I have been involved in places where the product, working on the actual product itself with data, is super important, both as a data leader within the startup community in Berlin, and in my various years in my career as a consultant. But I think that second camp is where you've got folks, you got an interesting mix of folks who are interacting with the data in this driving operational efficiency. Folks who maybe don't have the sort of certainly maybe have gaps in their technical background. They're not, they don't want to think about distributed compute. They don't want to think about cloud compute. They're certainly not thinking about advanced statistical whatever. And that's where folks come to us. We do have that technical expertise. We spend a lot of time thinking about it, so we're not solving any problem for the very first time every time we run into it. And the operational component is interesting in that it changes your process as your business, and it's kind of a one-time thing, or at least on a project by project basis. Whereas, if you've got a product that you're building around your data, you're going to have a dedicated data engineering team, a dedicated, data science or applied research team that are working on your product all the time. And that makes good sense. But if the question is, with this huge pile of data, which market should I go into next? Or with this huge pile of data, how do I slice up my sales territories in the most efficient way? That's not something that you need a dedicated team on an ongoing basis doing all the time, but those are very valuable and very important decisions. And that's the kind of stuff that we can help you with. And that's the kind of stuff that, like, consulting in general, and my team in particular, with the sort of life sciences bent that I work on at Simon-Kucher. We've got other stuff that we do too, but that's the sort of where we can bridge the gap between somebody that knows how to run a business as a generalist and the more specialized data knowledge you need to make the correct decisions for running your business.
Yeah, I mean, for some people, or a lot of people, data can be overwhelming. So when you are advising partners and clients about how much data is too much data, or analysis paralysis, like, what kind of advice do you offer in these situations?
Great question. So there's no such thing as too much data. I think, anything that you can write down and store somewhere, in terms of costs, data storage has gotten so cheap, it's basically free. I mean, like, compared to the rest of the cost of your business, if you're generating a data stream, the amount of data that you could generate should be so much smaller than the value that you're creating. that you should always be able to pay for your data. If you've got a problem where you're generating more data than you can pay for, you might have a problem there. Like that, just sort of organizationally speaking. The analysis paralysis is an interesting question because the complexity can send you down a bunch of rabbit holes, and where the real cost can come in is misappropriation of your data scientist or your analyst time, where you chase every rabbit as it goes into the field, and a man who chases two rabbits loses them both.
Yeah.
Sorry for the gendered expression, but I do believe that's what the text says.
Yeah.
The focusing on what matters is really the big thing here. And so complexity, data is a good example here because data is sort of tangential to IT, and these IT decisions that we make also have a similar kind of, you got a very complex system. You're not exactly sure what the impact of a decision is going to have on your business. So where I like to approach problems in this space is to start at what answer do I want to see and work backwards. So like the good thing about statistics is that it sort of gives you a framework that you can convincingly make up data. I'm not saying you're falsifying, but saying, okay, this is what it should look like, and we can simulate.
Yeah.
Does this, like, where do we need to get better in order for us to have a certain amount of information to trust in the decision we need to make? And so starting with the decision you need to support, or starting with the process that you want to improve, and then kind of working backwards with the mentality that we should be writing everything down. We should be storing all the information we possibly can, because you really don't know at the outset of when you're starting your journey as a business, or when you're starting your digitization journey, what data is going to be important. And I can tell you, I personally can find a use for anything that you write down. And that goes for stuff that seems like it's really, it seems really tangential to your business. Like to give you an example, I read about a restaurant chain that had an Internet of Things thing where they could record when their automatic doors were opening and closing. And that seems like a lot of data that's not super relevant, but that gives you traffic information in your store. And having the relevance, having the relevant technical expertise to say, like, okay, I understand if your door's opening 100 times a day, that gives me a certain expectation for traffic. And it gives me an idea of, how a specific marketing campaign is working. If you have an idea of how many people are coming through the door, and what marketing material they're seeing, you can get a real good idea of whether your specific promotion is looking good, whether your new product launch is looking good. And so this sort of, it seems like tangential information, but I promise you can find a use for everything. And the thing that really distinguishes a business from its competitors is that you have your own data and no one else has that. And that is a competitive advantage depending on the scale of your business. Privileged information is almost always valuable.
Well, we've seen the rise of Amazon, and that was having the data
They
that everybody else had.
Quick. Yeah, absolutely.
And they diversify. I think, are we on the cusp of you've mentioned the doors on a shop? Are we on the cusp of data entering the real world and not just click rate on a website, the digital world? Are we going to enter IoT sensors everywhere? Is data going to become even bigger in the real world, if you like?
I think we're already there. I mean, I'd say any sort of mobile first tech company, like the amount of stuff that they're collecting, or should be collecting from your phone, if you have given them the appropriate permissions, of course, can give just tons and tons of information. So I mean, like the multi-use sensor that's sitting in all of our pockets right now is already, I mean, I think we're already there. In terms of more non-phone IoT stuff, I mean, there's already plenty of industrial applications. I mean, any sort of, industry, I don't know which number we're at, industry 4.0, 5.0. I don't remember which one we're at.
At least four.
Any of these sort of tech-enabled factories, like predictive maintenance type of stuff with IoT stuff, like you got an engineering squad that knows you need the data. I've got a personal friend who's working specifically on detecting pipeline leaks from acoustic and temperature information, like all that stuff. I feel like it's already there. I mean, the question is sort of in a more maybe straightforward commercial relationship with your customer, like I sell widgets at my widget shop, kind of theoretical business, which there is no business like that. All businesses have more complexity than just, I can make widgets cheaper than my competitor. And so like that sort of idealized business school relationship. I think the vendor space is always super competitive in the folks that can come in and make that happen. I guess for me, picking the right problem to tackle if you're a non-digital native company. I had talked to some folks in kind of the consumer retail space, and they'd had an expectation that they were going to completely get rid of cashiers or something at their retail outlet. And maybe we're not there yet, but there's plenty of other stuff they could have done with sensors on shelves or cameras in the ceiling, that sort of stuff. So it's really not all or nothing. I mean, there's value to be gleaned. Even if we're not at the full, like I shouldn't have to make any decision today. I'd stand on my conveyor belt and have this sort of, the year 3000 kind of experience where the robots put my clothes on as I'm scooted down the hall. There's a lot of yeah, exactly. A Wallace and Gromit kind of situation. It's, there's a lot of value between here and there. And picking the right problems and making sure that we can adjust our expectations in such a way that we're able to see those opportunities to create that value is, I think, very important in our business relationship with data.
And if we go and focus on your area of expertise and life sciences, how does advanced analytics help Joe and Jane blogs, the everyday person?
Yeah, I mean, like there's all kinds of cool stuff, like with the fact that we've gotten to generative AI for the masses, so to speak. There's so many cool things you can do. I mean, I just read about a doctor who's handling his patient notes at the end of the day with generative AI. I think generative AI is like really particularly very helpful in life sciences because it is so document heavy. I mean, that's some of the stuff that we're working on at Simon-Kucher. We have a lot of like business to business contracting. A lot of manufacturers deal with that. And so being able to work in a secure environment and in a secure way with the proprietary documents of our clientele is important, because like there have already been some embarrassing security breaches with OpenAI in particular, and making sure that we can making sure that we're doing this in a responsible way going forward is super important. Yeah, I can babble at you all day if you'll let me, but like that's the sort of operational side. And on the product side, I mean, the algorithms are getting better and better for finding drug compounds, which is sort of central to the pharmaceutical industry. Can we discover drugs faster and more efficiently? And plenty of machine learning driven products with wearables, with other medical technology, all kinds of cool stuff out there. So it's we live in the future, man. It's just getting cooler and cooler every day.
What are your thoughts on the open source as being the base, and everyone should have that as the base level of generative AI, and then we build on top of that, and that's the value add. That's where the expertise come in. Should that be the basis of business in the future?
I mean, it kind of already is. I mean, with the exception of the, it's an excellent question. It's kind of like Python is the emergence of Python, which is like open source programming. That's been around for since the 90s and really been blown up in the last 10, 15 years. So like that is just sort of your data wrangling stack being written in R and Python. As an example of open source stuff showing up. I mean, when we talk about open source generative AI, I mean, I think it has to go there because it's already there's already stuff that's in the market, and that kind of the cost of using the Hugging Face open source AI model zoo versus, paying 10 cents a pop working with the Chat GPT API.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly that. Don't quote me, please. Don't be mad at me. I love you guys. But the real question is a question of talent. Like how many, this is very relevant for you guys. How many data scientists do you need to work with that open source stuff? So I think that's where there's really an opportunity for B2B vendors to really be the right vendor for the right customer with the right product. Because there's not an infinite number of people who can do this work because there's not an infinite number of people on this planet. So, I think that there's, I believe in my heart, anyone that sets their mind to something, you can figure a lot of this stuff out because there's so many good resources to learn. But there's, only a few billion people on the planet, and we'll rapidly outstrip our own population in need for technical expertise going forward. So having products that take some of the people out of that is something where I think there's a big startup opportunity, a big business to business venture opportunity, and consultants helping you figure out what the actual problem is, so which buzzwords are not buzzwords, but actual initiatives that your business should tackle.
Yeah, and talking about open source with the life sciences and pharmaceutical companies, where do we draw the line of obviously the research being done in-house for a pharmaceutical company to make a product and make profit versus sharing that with the community? Where's the line drawn?
That's a great question. It's less relevant than you think, I think, in pharmaceuticals in particular, just because it not only takes a village, it takes a whole country to get a drug from an idea to an actual product. It's an intense regulatory process, and it should be, because if you look in the years before the FDA, they used to drink perfume, man. That used to be like a real drug. It smells fresh. It probably is helping me against bubonic plague or whatever. Thankfully, we as a species have moved beyond that, and so but that really rigorous regulatory process ensures that we have healthcare solutions that actually work. It doesn't catch everything, but it does mean the number that gets thrown around is 10 years and $1 billion. So I don't have $1 billion lying around to just run out and steal pharmaceutical company XYZ's proprietary molecules. It is an interesting, the tools that are available to do some of that research. A lot of them are available. A lot of them are already open sourced. Where pharmaceutical companies and medical technology companies, I think reasonably get a little queasy about open sourcing is really versus their own competition. And I think it's a healthy competition that, folks are working kind of independently on similar stuff. But the tools are out there. If you want to find use bioinformatics is what it used to be called, now AI-driven drug discovery. You starting there and kind of moving forward, you can start your own. If you're charismatic and careful, you can start your own drug company with a bit of investment from VCs. And there are already plenty of tools within the community for you to do so. I'd say that the barrier is more knowledge, like expertise, than it is, proprietary things being behind proprietary walls and kept out of the community.
I think a lot of people are very protective of their ideas and their work, when really it's the passion and the drive to do the work is what creates the success.
More if I look at the pharmaceutical industry in particular, there are so many molecules that just don't work. And a lot of ideas are like that. If I kind of generalize that to ideas for business in general, we can be very protective of our own ideas. Most of them aren't going to work. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is sort of just the process of human creativity. But kind of knowing when you should keep your mouth shut and knowing when you should really go look for some market validation is an art. and requires a particularly human touch, which I think is fairly poetic in this age of generative AI.
Absolutely. As a consultant, you keep your finger on the pulse and you're advising your partners. What are you telling companies to straighten up right now? Needs to be done if you need to keep up versus, listen, that's a 10-year plan and doesn't need to be done now, but it's something that needs to be developed.
I think the thing that I'll bang on my drum all the time is you need to get your hands on your own data immediately. Even if that means, doing some rework, even if that means you don't have a full data warehouse, integrated data solution. The sort of IT solution of having a low effort, perfectly maintained data warehouse is sort of this idealized future state for a lot of companies. And I'd say that there's a lot you can do with your data now. So what you should be doing now is as much as you can dig into that raw data now, even if it requires some manual cleaning, even if it requires you to just have a place to dump it all. Like that is, that's something that you can get going now, and something that we can help you with. I push that to my clients. As often as possible. There's just the more decisions you make without data, the more value you're really leaving on the table. So, trying to act, with your IT in the state that it's in, like, IT projects second only to high-speed rail are sort of the most commonly overrun in terms of time and in budget types of projects that our species take on. I think on average, it's like 2x. Huge. I mean, like, just because we're dealing with super complex systems with a bunch of people, it's hard to know at the beginning how much work needs to be done. So independent of these sorts of IT migrations and IT, upgrade projects, which are always ongoing, meeting your data where it's at with the folks that can work with it is, I think, very, very important.
And in the longer term, so that's now, you need to make them use that of your value, your data. No one else has got that. That's your value add. Get that in order now. What can you then start thinking about after that?
Yeah. So I mean, like, kind of going back to our earlier in our discussion, what data could I be collecting that I'm not? What proprietary information do I have? My business process generates information in a way that my competitors maybe generate similar information, but not the exact same thing, because they're not buying my competitor's product. If they're buying my product, they're buying mine. So figuring out as much information as you can that you can collect. If you've got your IT infrastructure set up in such a way that you can collect that data seamlessly and quickly, that's a great thing. But what future data and I would counsel companies, don't break the bank here, but storage is relatively very cheap. And the more data that you can collect and make available in a way that you've got some data scientists and analysts and data managers able to at least take a look at what you got, there's just opportunities for value in the future.
Guess what? You can only manage what you measure, shall we say?
Yep, and that ain't a new thing.
No, it's the power of the question. So when you're saying get hold of data, and who does it fall on to be asking the question of, do we need this, or would that be valuable? So who's responsible?
This is a super tricky question, because the way that organizations are set up, everyone within their own business unit have their own kind of P&L that they're responsible for, and nobody wants to say, I'm spending more and more money on data every quarter. I'm spending more and more and more, and it's on stuff that just may be useful. So like the sort of conflict of interest there on what's good for the organization as a whole versus what's good for a specific business unit and the executive in charge of that business unit. So it's something that this is a super hard problem, because the folks who are at the top of an organization just do not have the bandwidth frequently to get into the details required for the details required for should we keep track of door information? Should we keep track of both the swing and the automatic doors and the push doors? Should we keep track of the bathrooms? Do we have legal liability for the bathroom? Like that kind of like level of detail question. But the philosophical approach, the value of the organization needs to come from the very top. So to say like, it's one of our central values that we write everything down, like that sort of leading by principle should come from the very top. So like if there's a question on why are you spending so much money, why are you spending so much money collecting information on whether or not the doors open in you're not in charge of the doors, you're in charge of marketing. Like that sort of cross silo collaboration with a value-based leadership here, where you could say, it's our values to write everything down. It makes the sharing of responsibility across those silos a little easier.
Nice. So I'm conscious of time, so I want to kind of finish with a quite open question. What is the Valhalla for data analytics, advanced analytics? Where are we trying to get to?
Oh man, it depends on who you ask and depends on what question. But if I can sum it up in a sentence, knowing what you need before you know you need it. So, yeah, as if we can predict the predictions, that would be the sort of that's the holy grail. That you don't even you can predict the disruptions before you need to know what you need to predict.
How dangerous is self-fulfilling prophecy in that situation?
I mean, well, it depends on it depends on what you're predicting here, and like if you're setting up your prediction in such a way that we're only predicting sort of what's outside of our control. I mean, you shouldn't predict what's in your control, because you can control it.
Yeah.
What decision you're gonna. That you can make a decision, and so like let's not try and predict. Let's not set up a predictive model to know what what my boss is going to say to me on Monday, but maybe setting up a predictive model for how a decision would be impacted by the stuff outside of your company. That's how you can avoid that self-fulfilling prophecy kind of problem. I mean, there are companies out there that are so big that they do set the market wherever they're playing, or at least they're very impactful in the market when they do anything. So there is sort of a tail wagging the dog kind of question here. But yeah, keeping your predictions focused on things that you can't control, and making sure your reports are focused on things you can.
Fascinating, and it's an exciting time. I feel like we're just at the start when it comes to data. It's been around for a long time, but it's kind of the adolescent years, experimentation and figuring out what we are and where we're going. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for your time and rich insights, Andrew.
Likewise, Matt. Good chatting with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure we'll speak again and have you on again in the future. To the listeners, don't forget to like and share so we can reach as many people as possible. But it is bye from us. Thanks once again, Andrew.
My pleasure.
Ciao for now.
Bye.